to another tutorial video. Today's one is showing you how to create a multi-aperture shaker card. I don't think I have done this as a tutorial. I'm hoping that I haven't. I know I've shown a few cards in the past that I have done this method on, but I don't think I've done a proper tutorial on it. But technically this card doesn't really need to be a multi-aperture shaker card, but the great thing about doing a multi-aperture shaker card is if you create each aperture as a separate shaker, you will always have something in each aperture, because if you imagine this whole panel being a shaker, these two, if this card is standing up, all of the confetti is going to be in the bottom and there'll be nothing left in these two. But if you make them all separate ones, then they'll all have a little cluster of confetti in them, which is the nice thing about this. And this tutorial video is in conjunction with the Tonic Create and Make number 5, which is called the Buzzy Bag Gift Box. And you can see it's a lovely dinky little die set that creates quite a large gift box actually. So if you want to have a look at that, then you can check out my up close video from yesterday showing you exactly what this die set creates and all of the pieces that you need to be able to create it. But for this video, we're just going to use some of the elements that are in here to create our own multi-aperture shaker card. And there's a beautiful little bee in here which is going to be like the main sort of feature of the card too, and then we're mostly focusing on the circular sort of elements just to create really simple designs on the card. So to begin with, I have already cut my 3 apertures into my card front, and you can see I kind of went with 2 closer together and 1 slightly further apart, and they're all slightly at different sort of places. Like these 2 aren't exactly in the same plane or the same distance from this edge of the card, they're slightly different just to make it look a little bit asymmetrical. So that is going to be our card panel, and these circles, if you have this die set and you're following along, these circles are cut with the largest layering circle that you get in this part of the die set. Then I have also cut 4 of these pieces, which you can see I've actually placed some offset. So this is cutting this circle here, but from Pistachio and from the sea salt green. And then taking the next circle in, which actually cuts around the beautiful detail here, and placing that in the centre to create these gorgeous ring elements. And these are going to frame up our shakers. And I actually have gone with cutting the largest aperture for the shaker, but you can definitely cut the smaller aperture for the shaker and then just stick this to your actual panel, whereas the method I'm going to show you is how to stick this to the actual acetate. So I thought I'd show you this way in case you have another die cut that you want to use that maybe doesn't have a separate outside cutting edge, or you know, you just want to replace it back into the cardstock to be able to create your shaker from it. So I thought I'd show you this way, just in case you haven't seen that kind of thing before, how you can actually just recess a shape back into a larger aperture when it's got the acetate behind it. So you're going to need those kind of pieces. Then I've also kept 3 of the central circles from these frames, so that's the second circle down size from the die set. So I've got 3 of those. And then I've got these smaller circles here, 5 of which I cut from this Speciality cardstock. A lot of these colours are from the Spring Meadow colour trend, and this is one of the Speciality papers from that colour trend. I think it was maybe called like Double Cream or something, or maybe Opal something, but it's a really pretty cardstock with a nice texture on. So I've got 5 circles of those and 1 pistachio one, and this is actually the waste piece here. So even though I wasn't cutting more of these pieces, I just put a scrap piece of card over the top of that little section and then ran it through my machine to get small little circles there for the rest of the design. And then I've also got 3 little bees cut from the Satin Gold mirror card. And then I've also got some of the leftovers from cutting my patterned panels to go on my actual box that you would have seen in yesterday's video. So these 2 gorgeous patterned panels have hexagons within them, and I've just saved a few of them that we're going to scatter across the card as well. Then you're also going to need, for the main shaker portion, you're going to need a piece of acetate that's either big enough to cover all the apertures or 3 small pieces to cover each aperture. And then you also want 3 pieces of card that are slightly bigger than your openings to create backers to all of our 3 little shakers. And actually the way you can you know, sort of decide if a scrap of card is going to be big enough. This is the actual size of the aperture because this is the same size die. So you can place it on your scrap of card and see if there's enough space around the edge, because you basically just need enough card to cover the whole area that you surrounded with foam tape, and then this will act as a backer to keep all of that confetti inside the shaker. So you want 3 bits of card like that, and then you're also just going to need any confetti that you want. I am going with that Spring Meadow colour trend, and I'm using the Apple Flower Gorgeous Confetti. I do often say, and I've been editing those Advent videos recently, and I said it in a few of them, that I usually like to put like white shaker stuff behind something because it really makes it pop out. But behind all of our, or in front of all of our apertures, I'm just going to put a bee, and I feel like it's still going to stand out if the background's white and there's flowers shaking behind it. So I think it's going to work nicely for this one, but you can definitely go for the iridescent circles or the opal cream circles as well, or something much subtler as well, or something gold, and then that might get lost if it's gold because the bee is gold as well. And then you also just need whatever foam tape you like to use. I do like to use normally a lower profile foam tape, but actually I'm going to go with a 2mm foam tape this time. So if you also had foam pads, then the Craft Perfect foam pads are a 2mm height, so they would work nicely for this too. So the first step is to take our panel with our apertures die cut into it and turn it over, and then we're going to take our acetate, and I'm using Tonic acetate, so you want to take the protective film that's on one side of it off, and then we want to add adhesive all around the back of our aperture. All around the back of our apertures. I'm really sorry if I hiccup, I've got hiccups again today, and I really want to get this video filmed. So as well as going around the apertures, you want to put some in the open space as well. Then we can place our acetate over the top. And then flip it over and use our long bladed pair of scissors to cut off any excess. Then we can take our little skinny frames that we created with cutting the 2 dies together, and we can place these into the apertures, and they're going to be stuck to the acetate. So now we've got our frames in our apertures, we can turn this back over and you can see them stuck onto there, and then we're going to add our foam tape on the back. And because we have got those little frames stuck onto the acetate, we can go over into the green areas when we're adding our foam tape. We don't have to just stay on the white, we can actually overlap into the green areas because they're not going to be seen from the front. So we're just going to take our foam tape and surround all of the areas with foam tape to create a shaker well like you normally do with a shaker, but we're going to create 3 shaker wells, so each one is going to be individual. So there we have all of our foam tape on the back there, and you can see they can be as neat or as messy as you want them to be, and the only sort of like limiting factor is when you're putting your foam tape in there, you just want to make sure that any gaps between any foam tape are smaller than your smallest element that you're going to put in your shaker card. For example, if I was going to put micro beads in here, I would need to butt some of the foam tape up closer together because there are some areas perhaps over here that might let a micro bead escape out of them, but because we're using this larger apple flower confetti, that's not going to come out of any of those little gaps, so it doesn't particularly matter if there's small gaps between your foam tape. So personally, I like to take the backing off of all of my foam tape before I put the stuff in the shakers. I do know that some people like to do it the other way around, but I always find that if I put the confetti in the shaker first and then I take the backing off, I inevitably nudge it when I'm trying to take the backing off, and then the confetti jumps onto the stickiness of the tape, and then it's a nightmare to try and remove it, especially if you're using micro beads, because they're going to make some height on there, so then your backing piece isn't going to stick down properly. So I just prefer to take the backing off of my foam tape first. But if you've never made a shaker card before, then you can test it out both ways and see which is your favourite way to do it, whether you want to put your confetti in first or whether you want to take the backing off first. So as we are doing a multi-chambered kind of shaker card, you can obviously do different confetti in each of them if you want to, and then the idea is that it's separated so you've got like a cool effect of having different shaker things that are all shaking at once and they don't get muddled up. But also, as I was saying earlier, each little shaker window is going to get a collection of the confetti at the bottom of it, rather than this all being open and everything fall to the bottom. It's quite nice to have little pockets where everything is being held in place, and when you're doing this, I think I prefer to start with one of them. So we're going to go with the middle one because I think it makes it easier. And you're going to take some of your confetti. I'm going to use the apple flower one, but whatever one that you want to use. And we're just going to gently tip some into our little aperture. I don't like to put too much in there, but this one is actually quite a flat confetti. So they should all sort of go in front of each other as they like join up at the bottom. But also, we haven't got anything behind in our aperture. We're going to put our bee on top of our aperture, so it's kind of different in that respect as well. If you are the kind of person who likes to put a lot of confetti in things, I think it's best to put your elements on top of your acetate on the front of the card. But if you like to just have a subtle amount of shaking elements in a card, then you could definitely go with the method of having your detailed image kind of behind the aperture as well, and then the stuff shakes over the top of it. There's multiple different ways of doing it. If you watch my tutorial on, I think I called it a channel shaker card, that was where I said I think I was using the iridescent circle confetti because they're clearer, and it doesn't matter if they're shaking in front of your stamped image, so you can kind of do things in that sort of way as well. So we've got the first amount of confetti in there, and firstly you want to place your backing piece just over that aperture, and you want to make sure that the cardstock is going to cover anywhere where there is a gap in that specific aperture. So for example, here my foam tape is wonky, I've left like a jaggedy gap there, so I've got to make sure that goes over that, especially if you are going to use micro beads, because they can escape out of all sorts of tiny little gaps. So you just want to make sure you place that so you can't see any of that well that you just put your shaker bits into, and press that firmly into position. And then for these next two shakers, their backing card might overlap onto this piece. So what you can do to make sure you're still going to get a really nice secure bond between everything, you can just add a little bit of glue now, so that when you put your backing pieces on later, they're going to have something to stick to, because we've covered up some of the foam tape that they would have stuck to. And then we can just go ahead and place our confetti in our other two shaker wells. So just tapping in a little bit more confetti. If you want to be more precise, then you can use the Nuvo spoon. I do find that very handy for tipping in confetti and micro beads and things as well. And actually there might be too much in there. I think maybe I tipped out a little too much, so I'm going to take a little bit of that away. So now we've got our confetti in there. We can take our other backing pieces and put them directly over our well, making sure again that they hide any of the areas where this is kind of exposed. So I want to make sure I get this little pointy bit here right down into this corner, and I want it to overlap up there as well. So we can press that into position. And then same in this top corner as well. I've got like a jaggedy bit here and over here, and I've got this corner here. So I want to make sure that my scrap piece covers all of that too. And obviously this doesn't have to be white, it can be patterned paper, it can be something that you inked, it can be a Speciality cardstock, a cotton handmade paper, whatever you want it to be in the background behind your shaker. And then we can bring our card round to the front, and you can see all of those beautiful floral elements shaking inside there. Sometimes you get a cluster of them and they kind of get a bit stuck, but over time gravity usually works and sort of lodges them free and allows them to shake around again. But you get this beautiful effect where each shaker has stuff in it, which is nice, and it doesn't all fall to the bottom. So if we have any of our backing pieces overlapping, we can simply just snip that off, and then we've got our perfect front panel for our shaker card. And I want to add some extra elements to this that might overhang the edge, so I'm not going to stick it onto my card blank yet, but I do still have exposed foam tape on the back. So I always recommend taking your leftover bits of backing off of the foam tape that you took off from here and just placing them over just the largest, stickier kind of areas, and that'll just stop it from sticking to your desk. So we can flip that back over and work back on this side. And I did decide on the layout earlier, so I'm referring back to a photo on my phone, but I'm going to put 1B on that aperture, 1B on this aperture, and then 1B on the final aperture at the bottom. And then I want to do like cluster kind of elements. I love this circle kind of effect, so I want to add a sort of cluster of the different colours of cardstock and the different sizes in the corners, or in sort of 3 different elements or areas on the card. So I'm going to go a bit like this, and then like this, and I like the fact that they might overlap a little bit, and then I might just have a couple of extra ones overlapping in different areas just to give more of that lighter colour in there too. So I'm going to get all of those stuck down, and then I'm going to come back in and add those tiny little hexagons as like a last minute sort of finishing touch. And then we do need to decide on a sentiment as well. I got distracted earlier and forgot to pick a sentiment. So I'll speed this bit up while I'm sticking them all down. So I've stuck all of those on, trimmed off the excess, and now I've stuck the bees onto the acetate on the shakers. And then I just want to take a few of these gorgeous little hexagons that fall out of those decorative panels and just place them randomly, because it's going to tie in the gold that I've used to cut the bees out of, and it's just going to add another sort of scattered kind of element to this card design. I really like that sort of scattered effect. It just gives a really nice look to a card, I think. So I'm just going to add a few of these in, do them in kind of little clusters, and again kind of like overlap some of them with some of the circular elements and have some of them that sort of hang off the edge as well, just to sort of ground everything and tie it all together. And then one here, and then maybe one just floating off there as well. And then we need to, while that glue is drying on that, we need to decide on a sentiment. So I often bring out the same kind of stamp set. This one is a really useful one to have. This is the Simply Sentiments small little 4x6 stamp set, or A6 stamp set. Which sentiment do we think? I quite like that one, So Lucky to Have You, and it's kind of like green. It could be a good lucky kind of card. So let's go So Lucky to Have You, and then I think I'm probably going to want to put it about there on the card, and we'll just get some black ink, I think. I know there's no other black on the card, but I think it will work alright having black ink, a black inked sentiment. So put that on a block, ink it up, and then stamp this onto a piece of white card. And then trim this into a little rectangle. And I think that just there is going to look really nice, although we might want to matte it onto a bit of the gold if I have another scrap of the gold lying around. So I just looked through my scrap box and I couldn't find any more scraps of the gold that I was using, so I think I just used it to cut a ton of bees to go on my box that I made. So I did find a little scrap of the Ombre cardstock, Ombre glitter cardstock that came out in the Spring Meadow colour trend, so it will go perfectly with this colour scheme, and I think that'll look really nice just having the sentiment on a tiny bit of glitter card. So I'm just going to put that onto there, and then we can trim around that with our scissors just to give it a little narrow border. And there we go, the perfect little sentiment to finish off our card, and I will add that with a little bit of foam tape. And just place that about there. And then all we need to do is stick that onto our card blank. So we can flip this back over, remove all of those random backing pieces that we put on there to stop it from sticking to our work desk. And then, where is my roll of double-sided? There it is. We can just add some double-sided onto the back here just to make it extra sticky, because we've only got a few bits of adhesive exposed from the double-sided foam tape. So that should hold nicely onto our card now. Okay, and there we have our beautiful multiple aperture shaker card. So really cute, lovely shaker card kind of idea. Maybe you've tried a shaker card before, maybe you tried the channel shaker card but you didn't like it that much and you want to try a different shaker card. Maybe a multi-aperture shaker card is something that you can give a go. And I've done it before. I know I've definitely shown this in a video where I did 5 trees in a row and I did them different greens behind them with different green confetti inside them. But you can definitely do rainbow kind of effects as well. Possibly not with a rainbow die, because I don't think you'd be able to put enough foam tape like around the edges of an actual rainbow die, and then you might have confetti that's too big to actually shake inside it. But you could definitely do rainbow effects by using like a background that maybe has wide sort of areas between the different cut-out shapes from it as well, to play around with more of like a rainbow or an ombre kind of look of different confettis or micro beads or seed beads, whatever you have really. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial video showing you how easy it is to create a multiple aperture shaker card, whether you're using the same or different confettis in there. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again in the next video.